Good morning. Welcome this morning to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Chris Rader, and I serve on your greeters, membership, worship, and buildings and grounds teams. I'm also the celebrant for today's service. If you're a visitor this morning, we're so glad you're here. We welcome every person of goodwill, just as you are. However you get around, whomever you love, whatever body you inhabit, whatever your age, you are welcome here. We invite everyone to join us for a social hour after the service, both in person and on Zoom. We're also having a newcomer chat and a discussion forum. Both will start a little after the beginning of the social hour. For folks on Zoom, you can find our order of service in the chat. It's so good to be together this morning in all the ways we gather. We're happy that you're here today. So I'd like to thank the Community Care Coordinating Team for helping to organize today's service. And thanks too to the Visual Arts Team for the colorful display of papeles picados that are used as decor for holidays in Latin America. And there's snowflakes hanging from there. If you look closely at each snowflake in the display, you'll see the name of a country of origin of some of our immigrant neighbors hidden in it. The snowflakes symbolize how people from many nations around the world live here among us, but many remain invisible to us in our segregated communities. May our service today shed light on some of their stories and make their presence visible to us. It's important to take some time every Sunday to acknowledge the story of the land our congregation sits on. We gather on the homeland of the Pasquosa, where they lived for thousands of years as stewards of this land. The Pasquosa people still live here. For many years, the United States government has broken its 1855 and 1893 agreements with the Pasquosa. The government stole the land ceded to the Pasquosa through fraudulent surveys, indifference, intentional violations, and by land transfers to colonists and corporations. The Pasquosa continue their traditions and seek to have their rights recognized. Non-Indigenous people and corporations, including CUUF and us as members, continue to profit from the colonization of this land. Only through examining our part in maintaining privilege and forming a true partnership with the Pasquosa people will decolonization and meaningful reparations be achieved. You can find more information on this on the Colville Tribe's website and at the Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center. Now it's time to take a breath and center ourselves as we kindle a sacred flame. We join Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists all over the world in lighting our chalice this morning. If you're joining remotely, please feel free to light your own chalice as well. Please join in repeating the chalice lighting words that are printed in your order of service. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek to share. Our service today centers on our migrant friends from south of the border. These opening words are two poems from Ricardo Ruiz's book, We Had Our Reasons. Number one, a sleeping bag and a semi. I came from Mexicali across the border. There was work for me in Arizona. I crawled into the gray sleeping bag, hearing the zipper, feeling the tape tighten around my legs and body. I became a gray balloon floating into the storage compartment where the trucker kept the chains. My mind clouded by the smoke. I meet the sky again in Nogales. I was born in California, so I could have walked, but I didn't know. I was bound up in not knowing. And this was our life in Mexico, written by Ricardo and Lorena. I'm talking about how we earned so little that I would rip up shirts to use as diapers. At night, those red plastic bags kept him from dirtying the bed. My husband worked for so little, and he would say, "This is for the child." Because, well, even if we didn't eat, it was for the child. That is to know poverty. That is why we came. Unitarian Universalists gather inspiration from many sources. I'd now like to read two more poems by Ricardo Ruiz. My Blue Car and the Black Dog. I slept in the back seat until the sun shone high, or I'd sit in the driver's seat and take the wheel. Sometimes I'd wiggle out and lie on the hood of the dusty 1982 blue Topaz. Our sitter, that black dog who would play for hours, he just kept bringing us back the ball, and we just laughed and ran through the rows. I always waited for the time my parents would break. My mom's face shining under the bandana and a sun hat, fresh cherries in her hand, foil burritos still warm in the dented green thermos, our lunch. The trunk of the car became our table on our own bring your kids to work day. And don't ever let them see you sweat. You just don't get awarded DACA like it's some government gift from above, delivered by La Virgen on a foggy morning to the statue in the house. You can't just say, hey, I'm gonna apply, here's my info, give me the permit. Every 2 years, you have to pay thousands of dollars, $600 to file if you can do your own paperwork and don't need an attorney. They're expensive, so don't mess up. You gotta stay calling the CIS office, making sure of where your permit is at. I look over my shoulder every single day and watch my words carefully. Some guy threatened to call the Border Patrol when he cut me off on my way to work. He looked at me when I pulled up on him at the red light. Is today the day? Am I gonna catch a case? The next time, and there is a next time, some government worker runs my background, will they see what he said? Or how the woman at the grocery store clutched her purse when I walked up to her to give her the phone she left in front of me? What I see could make me denied on my DACA renewal. This is the time in our service that we set aside with reverence to honor those life events which have an impact on us in a deep personal way. This is clear. We acknowledge that we are all immigrants living unequally on the homeland of the Piscuosa. Today, we've invited 3 women to talk about other migrants in our community. I thought you were going to have a write-up about them in the order of service, but it turns out it's not there. So let's see. Jaime Krish, beloved member of our community for years, grew up in Chicago. She was involved there in the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s with Jesse Jackson's Operation Breadbasket, which became Operation Push. She was recruited she moved to Houston, met Colleen, so forth. Then she was recruited in 2008 by Central Washington Hospital to head up our respiratory therapy department here, and so they moved here to Wenatchee. She's continued to be involved with social justice issues. She has a son and daughter and grandkids living in California. Jessica Ingman, and both of these folks are involved with, volunteer with Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice, which you'll be hearing about. Jessica Ingman is the regional organizer for Faith Action Network, FAN. She's a candidate for ministry with the Lutheran Church, and she currently attends the Sunny Slope Church, Church of the Brethren, part of that community, and she is doing a ministry with Dane Breslin there, exploring anti-racism and spirituality. And Jess has a husband and 2 young boys, and she will introduce our 3rd speaker, Lupe. Bienvenidos, Lupe. Not quite yet, just a second. Yeah, so they are, Jamie was a board president here for a term. We're so happy to see her face again. And she's going to present the history of the group Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice, their involvement with various Latino communities and with farm and orchard laborers during COVID. Jess will talk about current WIJ happenings, as well as other immigrant support activities, including that statewide Faith Action Network. And Jamie, Jess, and Lupe will deepen this conversation with a forum in the Blue House immediately after the service. You're all welcome to attend. We're going to start out with Jamie, and Jamie has some photos to share. Come on up, Jamie. Want to be here or down there?
Appreciate that. Good morning, and thank you. I am so excited to be here and to be able to share my experiences over the past few years with the immigrant community. Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice was initially formed at the request of Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, known as WAISN. Under the Trump administration, Customs and Border Patrol and ICE increased their activities, particularly outside the courthouses, and many times in violation of immigrant rights. At the leadership of Brenda Rodriguez Lopez, WAISN initiated a court accompaniment program and opened up a hotline so that community members could call and request accompaniment to their court dates. If that request was on this side of the mountain, we would be informed and we would pull together a team of 2 or 3 people that would meet the community member at a predetermined location, and we would escort them to and from their court appointments. Most of this happened actually out in the Ephrata area because that was where a lot of the heightened activity was. During this time, we were also involved in Know Your Rights. Oops, sorry, okay, thank you. Is that better? We were also involved in Know Your Rights and Rapid Response. Now this went on for several months until COVID hit. When COVID came, of course, the courthouses shut down and there were no more meetings. So we decided that we would get with the Latinx community meeting members and ask them what could we do to be of assistance to their community. And there was no surprise that they were going to need financial assistance. We had never even entertained the idea of becoming fundraisers, but we went ahead and took that on. Sunny Slope Church agreed to be our fiscal sponsor for people that wanted to donate by check. And I talked with Jeff Lau, who's the treasurer of the Stone Blossom Sangha, and he got with the Buddhist Board of Directors, and that very evening, got approval for them to be our fiscal sponsors for our GoFundMe page. We set up a detailed record-keeping system, and then we wanted to be good stewards with the money that came in because we didn't know how we were going to distribute this and to who. So we decided to rely on the major Latinx community leaders to give us referrals. That was Norma Gallegos with Hand in Hand, Elma Chacon with Cafe, Teresa Zepeda and Bendito with Parque Padrinos. Immediately, referrals started coming in. My first referral was a young woman with a toddler. She had been off of work in being quarantined for over a week, so she was short a paycheck. When I called her and told her I was coming out, she tearfully asked me if I could also bring her diapers, detergent, and regular soap. So right out of the gate, we knew that there was going to be a huge impact on this community. As the spring approached and the farm workers and orchardists came to the area, we partnered again with Parque Padrinos. The 2 Teresas, myself, and another WIDGE member, Emery Quantaqua, committed to going out and visiting the labor camps on a regular basis to check on the workers and to take them information about COVID. We decided that we were going to put together, and we can start the slides, Vern, and thank you very much. We would put together goodie bags for them. Made up hundreds. On? There it goes, sorry. I made up hundreds of small spray bottles of 70% isopropyl alcohol. Emery belonged to a network of people that crochet, and you can see these lovely crocheted bags. We would put soap in that, and they would become soap bags for in the shower. The workers loved them. We would put snacks and treats, COVID information, and masks. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. That's us assembling some of the bags. Masks became the biggest issue for us initially, though, because if you'll remember, PPE equipment was really, really hard to get back then. So thanks to groups like Beth Vaughn's Stay Safe and SEW, S-E-W, Love, they donated hundreds of masks to us, as well as individuals. I picked up masks a couple of times from Louise Rasmussen's house. Shannon Eisert gave us a few masks. And go ahead and... I'm getting there. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. Right there, so. And you'll notice this photo here. I think you'll all recognize her. Mary Madsen made a lot of masks for us, including masks for kids. And was that fun? The kiddos absolutely loved these masks. We let them pick out the one they wanted. They put it on. It was like Christmas. Next slide, please. And then they'd pose for us and want us to take their picture. It was great. These kids are from an apartment complex that is not too far from here. And in thinking about going out to the camps, we wondered if we were going to be welcome. We were going in the evening. They would have worked a full day at work. Were they going to be tired? Next slide, please. But Teresa Zepeda had the answer to it. She had music on her phone, and there was a song and a dance that she would do. And it was very demonstrative. It was about wearing a mask. It was about washing your hands. Here you see her demonstrating how to distance, and she would twirl. The guys would come out of their quarters, and when the song was done, we'd ask questions and we'd give them prizes. And that really opened the gate for us. We were always welcome then at the camps. Next slide, please. Out in Monitor, they have living quarters for families. So these are just some of the kids that were out there. Next slide. And you can see there's actually a pregnant mother and some kids. Next slide. We'll go ahead and show some slides of us. I believe this might have been out in Kashmir at the camp with some of the workers. Next slide. This is a guy who had won one of the prizes, so he's coming up to get his prize in Monitor. Next slide, please. And this is out in Malaga. If you'll notice their posturing, you notice they've got their thumbs up. This really is an indication of how welcome we were and how much they really appreciated. And I think they really appreciated our presence more than anything else, that somebody really cared for them. I must admit that when we first started going out to the camps, there was this real lack of concern attitude towards COVID. I believe that's because they didn't really understand the effect that COVID could and would eventually have on them. However, it didn't take very long for that attitude to change. Workers started testing positive for COVID. They would have to go into isolation without pay. If you were exposed to someone, you went into quarantine without pay. There could be a possibility that you were in quarantine and then you would test positive, so you could spend several weeks without pay. The stress level began to increase. And then when we had a couple of laborers die from COVID, the stress level went through the roof and fear set in. We began hearing about issues out at the camps. We began hearing about really sad stories. One worker out in Malaga had been in quarantine. Then afterwards, he tested positive for COVID. He was ill. He decided that he was not going to spend any more time without pay here and decided to go home. Unfortunately, this man was killed in an auto wreck on the way. Out in Orondo, we ran into a situation where a man had died and his family was trying to get his body back to Mexico. Fortunately, one of our co-coordinators, Marichui Alvazar, was able to connect them with a funeral home that assisted them, and we were able to provide some financial help as well. Go ahead and slide. Well, there's a nice looking group of volunteers. That's Teresa Bendedo, Mary Catherine Dean, myself, and Emery Quantaqua. Next slide, please. We also ran into 5 guys who were in quarantine in a converted shed. Their roommate had died from COVID. They were responsible for providing their own food. They were running low. We were able to, next slide, please. Nope, that's not the right one. Next one. Nope, it must not be in there. Go back, there we go. This shows really well. We were able to bring them out groceries, and they had requested a Spanish Bible that we were able to bring as well. If that wasn't enough, all these cascading events, next slide, the fires hit out in Brewster and Bridgeport. We heard of a labor camp that lost power and water, and the men were moved and spent the night. There was no place for them to go. They spent the night, a chilly September night, out in the park. We contacted some organizations up there. They told me what some of the needs were. Next slide, please. And we loaded up and headed out. You'll see that there's some large cartons in there as well. I had just received some N95 masks from the health department. So we took some of those up there as well to be distributed. Next slide, please. The Red Cross at that time was not setting up shelters during COVID. They were housing people in hotels. However, hats off to them. That wasn't a possibility up there. They mobilized, they brought in equipment, supplies, and they set up a shelter in the high school. I believe, Beth Sattler, your husband Cookie was involved in that. So the men were moved to the shelter. They were still working during the day. Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice and other organizations decided that every day when the bus came in while the workers were at the shelter, that we would be in the parking lot. We would offer up support, solidarity, and everyone brought different things for the guys that we thought might be useful. Towels, washcloths, socks. Some people brought up lots of snacks and drinks, and of course masks and things. Go ahead and start going through these. There we are. That's Irene Morrow, myself, Teresa Zepeda, and again, Emery Quantaqua. Next slide, please. One of the things that really impressed me and has stuck with me was the sense of community that these men have. They would get off the bus, they saw us, oh, they were so pleased. I think, again, it really emphasized the importance of presence, that people cared to be there and stand with them. They have such a sense of community. Nobody grabbed anything. Nobody took more than they needed. They would pass things back if there was a line to make sure that other people got with, something. So it was a tremendous learning experience for me. Next slide. Okay, we're done with the slides. While all this was going on, we continued to have referrals, more and more referrals here in Wenatchee, and the needs became greater and greater. We were instrumental in helping people navigate the healthcare system. We were helpful in helping them obtain medical supplies and equipment. We were instrumental in helping with educational events. And when the vaccines became available, one of our co-coordinators, Irene Morrow, is an ARNP, and she helped with the vaccination clinics. I think DACA was mentioned at one time during the service today. People were having trouble affording the renewal fees for DACA and green cards. Along with that, we were advocating for just legislation and immigrant relief funds as well. We also began applying for grants, and Beth Sattler actually did our first application for a $10,000 grant that we got. And we've continued to ask for grants and receive them. We are still getting referrals. The lasting effects from COVID are still here. You know, in looking at all the things that have transpired over the last few years, I find that this fits in really well with 4 of the 7 UU principles. 1, 2, 6, and 7. And I'll just read the first 2. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Throughout all of this, Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice managed to forge relationships with other organizations, speaking of kids. She's a future member. Forge relationships and work with other organizations and people. And it really solidified how when you unify with other organizations and you have a common goal, you can really get a lot accomplished. We were able to help hundreds and hundreds of families here in the Valley and all out. One of the other things we did out in the region where the fires were, we were able to help some people and families that were personally affected. There was a woman who took care of a wheelchair-bound brother, and they lost half of their trailer during the fire. And then a family that lost their whole trailer and 2 cars during the fire. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. We were able to help them emergently with some financial aid and then guide them to agencies that could help them on a longer-term basis. As I turn the podium over to Jessica, before I do, another success story is during this time of COVID, there were 5 co-coordinators with Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice. 4 of them were retired white women. And then Mary Chewy Alvazar, who is the head of international studies at the college. As time rolled on, we had a vision that eventually we could turn the reins over to a younger, more diverse group. So as Beth Sattler, Mary Catherine Dean, myself stepped aside, it opened up the door for Rachel Pashkowski, who works with Columbia Legal, Jessica Ingman, who works with Faith Action Network and brings a world of experience, Lupe Peregrino, who is with Madrinas de Salud and brings a lot of experience as well. When we work together to help everyone fulfill their potential, we all benefit. And when we light a light for someone else's path, that light lights our own as well. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see all you guys.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Chris and the whole community for welcoming us. Lupe and I are, as Jamie said, 2 of the new co-coordinators with WIJ, and so we have a shorter piece to share, but I'd first like Lupe to speak, and I will, I'm not fluent in Spanish, so she wrote it out, we translated it, and I'll share it in English, but we're making our way together, and as Jamie said, Lupe has been involved in Madrinas de Salud and also a lot of our outreach for the Washington Immigrant Relief Fund. So Lupe, you can puede compartir.
Hola, muy buenos días. Gracias por invitarme para participar con ustedes. Mi nombre es Guadalupe Peregrino. Soy una de las coordinadoras de la organización de WAISN, la Red de Justicia para los Inmigrantes de Wenatchee, y es una organización sin fines de lucro que ayuda a la comunidad emigrante a encontrar apoyos para las diferentes necesidades, por ejemplo, gastos de migración, ayudas financieras para renta, luz, servicios públicos y pausa.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for inviting me to share about our organization. My name is Guadalupe Peregrino, and I'm one of the coordinators of WIDGE. It's a nonprofit organization that helps the immigrant community find support for different needs, for example, immigration expenses and financial assistance for rent and utilities.
Ayudas en las necesidades que van surgiendo día a día en la comunidad. También asistimos en ferias de recursos para dar a conocer las ayudas que tenemos.
We help with needs that arise day after day. We also assist with resource fairs to share the services we have.
Estuvimos trabajando en el proyecto de WARF, donde se ayudó para los Fondo de Ayuda para los Trabajadores Emigrantes del Estado de Washington afectados por el COVID-19, ayudando a llenar las aplicaciones en diferentes locaciones y diferentes condados, ya que muchas personas no saben cómo llenar una aplicación. Trabajaban aproximadamente 10 personas contestando llamadas de 8 de la mañana a 8 de la noche, de lunes a viernes, durante 8 semanas que estuvo el programa abierto, y todavía se sigue trabajando, corrigiendo y reenviando las aplicaciones al sistema. Y estoy muy feliz de haber participado en este proyecto y poder hacer una pequeña diferencia en la comunidad.
We were working on the Washington Immigrant Relief Fund project to help fund immigrant workers in the state of Washington affected by COVID-19, helping fill out applications in different locations and counties since many people didn't know how to fill out the application. Approximately 10 people worked answering calls from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Mondays through Fridays during the 8 weeks that the program was open, and they're still working on correcting and resubmitting applications to the system. I'm very happy to have participated in this project and to be able to make a small difference in the community.
Me alegra poder formar parte de este gran equipo junto con Jess, Marichu, Erin, Richard, Alejandra y su servidora aquí presente. Y muchas gracias por invitarme a compartir con ustedes, y muy emocionada por empezar este año nuevos proyectos para ayudar.
I'm glad to be part of this great team together with Jess, Marichuy, Irene, Rachel, Alejandra, and yours truly here. Thank you very much for inviting me to share with you, and we're very excited to start new projects. Gracias, Lupe.
Gracias.
Gracias. Y sí, puede, okay. And I think, Fern, were there a few more slides? Yes, so muchas gracias, Lupe. I will share just a little bit more after Lupe's words. So we work in solidarity with community members and organizations at which to be advancing equity, opportunity, and justice for all immigrants living in our region. And next slide. And just to share a few words about WIDGE today, as Jamie had mentioned, as WIDGE continues to change and grow, we are actually becoming our own 501c3. Sunny Slope has been amazing for their support as a fiscal sponsor, but we are getting ready to take on the reins for that. And as we receive larger grants, and it's more and more time, so we now have a board of trustees as well as coordinators. So that photo is of some coordinators and a board of trustees. And part of what we're trying to do is really ensure that we are immigrant-led and centering the voices of immigrants in our organization. And so part of our bylaws are that at least 40% of our coordinators and 40% of our board must have lived experience as immigrants or in immigrant families. And we're working with amazing organizations, Hand in Hand Immigration Services. Actually, everyone received a yellow little handout with a wide variety of some amazing organizations here that you can read about. We are trying to be in collaboration with Hand in Hand, CAFE, Parque Padrinos, NERP, and others who are already effectively doing work in our community. In addition to the Immigrant Relief Fund grant that we've been working on, we also provide a service line. And that is, folks can call, and within 2 days, they will get a response from one of our coordinators to walk through with someone as they try to access resources. Sometimes it's dealing with medical debt, so applying for charity care, maybe connecting someone with community action for rent. But we also receive referrals from our partners, as Jamie mentioned. The impacts of our racist policies and laws in our country really came on display in COVID, in the continued aftermath of the financial and healthcare struggles for everyone, but especially in the immigrant community. So in addition to trying to meet immediate needs, which our work is doing, we're also trying to change the structures that have set up very unequal playing fields. And that's where my work with Faith Action Network comes in. Could you put the next slide up? I will just say a little bit about Faith Action Network. We are a multi-faith statewide organization. Over 160 faith communities across Washington state are partnering together on to work for the common good. So Buddhists, Muslims, Jews, Catholics, Christians, Unitarian Universalists, Sikh, but we're focusing on legislative advocacy, education, and public witness. And I'm happy to share more about that in the forum, but it connects with WIDGE because we are working together with Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice and also our partner, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, on 2 key pieces of legislation in 2023 that could have a huge impact on the immigrant community. So next slide and last slide. And this is where I really want to invite you to consider joining us either in person or making a call to our state legislators this spring. On February 9th, Faith Action Network will be in Olympia. We'll have an interfaith prayer service. We'll be speaking with legislators and doing some advocacy workshops. And then on February 16th, WAISN will be in Olympia. Lupe is going that day. I'm going February 9th, but we will be advocating for 2 key pieces of legislation. One is to fully implement and fund the Health Equity for Immigrants campaign. Some of you might have been working on this already for many years, but that is a really key piece where basically by 2024, the state of Washington is hoping to have an entirely an accessible way for residents living in our state who cannot access affordable health care through the Washington portal. They will have a portal that they can apply for health care and be able to afford it regardless of their immigration status. So we want that idea, and funding has been started, but we want that to be made into a bill so we can rely on it. And the other piece of legislation is that right now, if someone is working in the state of Washington and they are undocumented, they're paying taxes, but they don't have access to unemployment insurance when the season ends or if they get laid off from their job. And so we are working with WAISN, FAN, and others to create a separate unemployment system that folks working in the state of Washington can access the funds that their employers are already contributing for them if they need unemployment. So want to be respectful of time, but if you would like to learn more, come to the forum. We have some sign-up sheets in the back for Faith Action Network, as well as for Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice, our listserv. Join with us in making the structural changes. Thank you for your support for the immediate needs. Grateful to be with you in this work together.
Thank you, Jessica, Lupe, and Jamie. Spirit of life and love, we are grateful that love is infinite, unlimited. May we be inspired by the demonstrations of love that we've seen in today's service. And may all of us express love to all as we go forward. May it be so. We'll now extinguish the chalice. Please join in saying the words written in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.